it's really all over the place, but I'm just trying to express that it's very common in metal, like for the mixer to also master, and there's really
the lines are blurred
to no detriment really. Like it's a lot of these guys are doing great work, and I wouldn't say it would be better if the mixer just mixed and sent it out to someone else to master, because often what we're doing in the mixing phase is we're mixing but with mastering in mind. So once we, like for example, if you were to take all of your master processing off of, say you have a final mix, it's a metal mix, it's like, it sounds great, the artist loves it, it sounds great on streaming. If you were to take the mastering chain off and listen to how that mix, it would be all over the place balance wise, because we're compensating in the mix to get the master to where we want it, so that once it's at that certain LUFS level, once it's at whatever sounds good, -10, -9, whatever, it's the kick and the snare is punching where we want it. It's hitting where we want it. Everything is hitting where we want it. But if we were to take all those plugins off or hardware off, the mix would be not how we would balance it if we were just mixing it, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. It's like the mix bus, when you're mixing into the mix bus, like it affects everything, every move you do, right? Like people that do like top-down mixing, right, that start with the stereo bus compression or whatever, and maybe like, EQ, they're mixing into that. So when you take it off, everything falls apart. There are some people that mix the other way around from the ground up, and then it's not as important.
Necessarily the mix falls apart. It just needs to be rebalanced a little bit. Like especially the drums and guitars, like things just need to be like basically the drums need to be tamed a little bit, because the transits be like really poking out when you take the mastering processing off of the mix. So like I remember your guest last week, he was talking about how he does the opposite. Like he's more about the he doesn't put anything
Josh
on.
Bonanno.
He's more like a purist of like traditional mixing, which is great too. I mean I think it's also very genre dependent. Like I wouldn't do that if I was mixing a pop song or mixing, something else. Like that's like a very specific, like to metal technique, I would say.
Yeah. No, I get it, because you're trying to push things loud, and like how the kick and the snare and the bass are hitting that stereo bus thing.
Right.
And then you adjust
often,
the whole chain.
Yeah. What happens is, say you send it out to, it's a heavy rock metal mix, and you send it out to Chris Loralgi and he mixes it. It sounds awesome. And then you send it out to be mastered by, say, Ted Jensen, and who is amazing. And it gets to, he does his thing, or whoever's mastering it, they do their thing, and it's not like to the loudness level that the client may want. So to the detriment of the way the transients are sitting, to the way the drums are punching, if the mastering engineer makes it louder, like to please the artist, what happens is a lot of those snares will go away. You know what I mean? A lot of the kicks and snares would kind of get squashed in a little bit, and it won't be as punchy.
It's so crazy. That's so crazy. That it's so crazy that like the pursuit of loudness makes mastering inside the mix better than sending out to a dedicated mastering engineer for some genres.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not always the case, but that is just what I've realized. Sometimes you have to do things a little bit more extreme, because it's an extreme sound. It's an extreme genre. Like a lot of these artists, they expect it to be a certain loudness, and if it's not as loud as whatever they're listening to right now, then they think there's a problem or there's something is wrong. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like, obviously, that's not the case, but that's just the reality.